Hello, everyone. Welcome to another exciting edition of Building Subtext. This week, we're going to talk about that famous scene where one character says to the other, "You and I, we're really just the same." And then the other character says back, "What are you talking about? We're nothing alike. We're completely different." And then they have this big argument. As Robert Towne once said, who was the screenwriter of Chinatown, a movie, I think, is really only 4 or 5 moments between two people. The rest of it exists to give those moments their impact and resonance. The script exists for that. Everything does. And he's absolutely 100% right. That argument where they say you and I are both is not a trope. Tropes are completely nonsensical and worthless. So put those out of your mind. The you and I argument is really the foundation for the narrative argument that determines the structure for the entire story. So it's the basis of everything. And if you know what your two characters are arguing about, then it's much easier to build an entire narrative structure from that, as opposed to just fumbling along and trying to figure it out. And so, what I did in Subtext this week is I took a lot of the artificial intelligence stuff, wrapped it up into the premise builder, and now you can have the artificial intelligence generate for you that you and I scene that you can then go ahead and put into your story. So, this is Subtext here. And the premise builder is where you go about actually building your story. And if we come down here, you'll see there's a place to do the dramatic argument. The stuff up here is about genre, which is a completely different topic altogether. But right now, we're just going to focus on the dramatic argument. And I'm going to use a couple different examples, real world film examples, but I'm going to change their names so that it doesn't look like the artificial intelligence is just grabbing an actual scene from that film. So the first one I want to do is Collateral. It's a Michael Mann film with Tom Cruise. He's a hitman and he jumps in a cab driven by Jamie Foxx. And Tom Cruise goes through and he has to knock off a bunch of people before a big court case the next day. And when it starts out, Jamie Foxx is really timid. He's got all these dreams, but he really doesn't do anything about them. And by the end, he actually changes and is more like Vincent at the end. That argument between going for something or kind of avoiding what it is that you want to do is a real classic narrative structure. So I want to start with that one first because it's a really popular one, especially in Western culture. If you were to watch the scene here at Collateral, when he's going back and forth and he's saying, "Why did you kill him?" And then there's the whole thing about maybe I should just hold off and hang out in my taxi cab like you. So the back and forth between the two of them, that's you and I. They don't actually come out and say it. It's a little more, I wouldn't say sophisticated because there's some great stories that actually use you and I. I always tell people, write the scene, but then you can pull that out so that it doesn't seem like you're not just using that as a kind of cliched sort of thing. In this film, it's great. It's this moment and the moment earlier when Cruz is talking about his childhood is really the core of that you and I. If you came to write something like Collateral, you're thinking about these two characters and how one is just going for it whenever he sees a problem, he just goes and takes care of it, whereas the other one's kind of holding back. That would be this argument between pursuit and avoid. So you can see here, these are the two positions of every argument. And so that argument, that narrative, dramatic argument that fuels everything is really a pair of elements that are both drawn towards each other and repulsed by each other. They're kind of two sides of the same coin, right? You can't have avoidance without pursuit. You can't have logic without feeling. They're two sides of it. And that's what's creating the dramatic tension between the two of them because in some respects, they're very much alike, and in some respects, they're very different. Most of these are pretty clear, like logic and feeling, faith and disbelief, conscience and temptation. Most people understand what those are. It's when you get into some of the other narrative families where you might not understand who has an argument between effect and cause or result and process, and even more stranger, deduction and induction and probability and possibility. And forever, I would always have to try and teach everybody different examples for that. Well, now with the artificial intelligence, you can just get them yourself. You don't have to wait for me to answer a support call. Let's pretend we're writing Collateral. This should be fun. And again, I'm going to use different names. We'll just use their actors' names. So Jamie Foxx, he's Max in Collateral. And then Tom Cruise, I'm just going to call him Tom. Big celebrity actors, it should be easy to tell the difference between the two. This is how you can determine which one's the main character, which one's the influence character. The main character is the one whose eyes we experience the story through. The influence character is the one who shines the light on the main character's blind spot, makes them aware of, hey, fooling yourself, what it is you're doing. This is the pair of arguments between the two of them. So Tom Cruise is very much pursuit, pursuit, pursuit. Every time he has a problem, he just takes care of it. And he even alludes to the fact that he took care of his dad way back when. And then avoid is completely Jamie Foxx because he doesn't want any part of it. Beautiful girl drops in his cab. He doesn't do anything about it. He's lying to his mom about what he's doing. That one's pretty clear. And again, these are pretty easy. What you want to do is you want to illustrate their position a little bit more so that when you go to generate the you and I, the more lively it is, the more fleshed out it is, the better response you're going to get from everything. But if you don't have an idea of what that is, what you can do is you just click here and it'll make up a position based on this element of avoid. Jamie believes that people want to prevent someone from getting hurt in order to be content because they do not want to see others suffer. Jamie believes that if everyone could just be more empathetic and understand what it feels like to walk in another person's shoes, the world would be a much better place. You can even see that's just the first one. It's actually pretty close. So I'm just going to pop that in there. And let's see, people want to, and I'm just going to make it really clear, avoid, let's see, prevent others from getting hurt because they do not want to see others suffer. So I just made that because it's a little bit closer to the film. I mean, he believes that if everyone could be more empathetic and understand what it feels like to walk in another person's shoes, the world would be a much better place. And that's pretty much what he's saying behind the scenes here, underneath the level of everything. So like they're saying dialogue and they're having some really great back and forth with each other, but the subtext of it is Jamie's all about avoid. Vincent's point of view, or Tom's point of view, is the opposite side of that, which is pursuit. Tom believes that people are driven to pursue in order to know that everything will work out because they'll never be sure if everything will work out. And if they don't pursue, they'll never know for sure. All right. So that one's a little wonky. Doesn't quite feel like the way regular people talk. Tom believes that scouting out someone before trying to be successful is a smart move. He thinks that it gives you a chance to see if the person is actually worth your time and effort, and it also allows you to get an idea of what they're really like. That is the club scene. That is the club scene in Collateral, like to the T, where he has Fox go and do it for him because he wants to check him out beforehand. All right. I was going to edit it because the last one was a little wonky, but this is crazy. This is too cool. All right. So I dropped that in. So now we have two ideas of where they're standing on both sides of the issue. And if I want to check and make sure before I go and build the story, which is here, and you could see this would be Jamie Foxx's arc. In the beginning, he's completely avoided. At the end, he's pursuing. If I just tap that, go out and build the entire narrative structure and tell me what's supposed to happen in each and every act. But what I'm going to do is just do the you and I argument here between the two of them and see what kind of a scene it comes up with. So let's see. It's going out and putting everything together. All right. Tom tells Jamie, "You're sort of like me." Jamie replies, "What do you mean?" Tom says, "You're always looking for the best in people. You want to understand them and you want to help them, but you have to be careful because sometimes people don't want to be helped. They want to stay in their own little world. If you just try to help them, they'll push you away." Jamie says, "I don't believe that. I think if we all just tried to be a little more understanding, a little more patient, we can make the world a better place. Maybe in an ideal world, but not in the real world. People are too selfish, too wrapped up in their own lives to care about anyone else. That's why it's important to be careful who you trust. You can't just go around giving your heart to everyone." Which is great. If you think about the whole thing with his parents when he was younger, Jamie argues, "But what's the point of living if you're not going to take risks? If you're not going to try to connect with other people and understand that life is all about relationships. And if we're not careful, we'll end up living in a world where we're all just afraid of each other." That's really cool. It's funny because he says, "What's the point of living if you're not going to take risks?" He's talking about risks about actually caring about people doing stuff, not the kind of risks that Cruz is going after. You can see how they are similar. And that's why when it's generating the argument here, it's getting both sides and okay, maybe you are like, and then you could continue that. He's like, wait, you just said, what's the point of living if you're not going to take risks with relationships? How is that any different from your dreams? Which is exactly what the argument is. It's so cool. Then you would just go ahead and build that. It would go out and build the whole thing, and that would be it. So that's one example of the you and I are both alike, and that works so well. I, I'm not really sure I want to keep going in case it screws up, but let's just do it anyways and see what happens. The second one I had was Unforgiven, which towards the end of Unforgiven here, where he's waiting to find out where's my money. And obviously Ned has moved on to greener pastures. And the kid here, what's happening in this film, in this clip, is that because Ned's gone, Morgan Freeman character's out of the picture. This kid takes over that role. So what happens is you have a handoff influence character. It starts with the kid a little bit, and then Morgan works as Clint Eastwood's influence character until he's gone. And then the kid here is doing the thing where he's, I'm nothing like you. I'm not a killer. That is another you and I are both alike sort of thing. Now, their argument is not pursuit and avoid, because that doesn't make any sense, right? Because if the kid is all pursuit, money definitely isn't avoid. He doesn't want to get into trouble with anyone, but he's still going after the reward. So it's a little bit different. Let me go ahead and get rid of these. Okay, so then for the main character, I will call him Carl, just because it starts with the same letter. And I think I can get away with Morgan here for influence character. Oh, maybe I'll do Clint. Hopefully you won't see that. Okay. Now, in this one, their arguments are consider and reconsider. And you might wonder what's the difference between those two, which is great. Pursuit and avoid makes sense. Either you're going towards something or you're running away from it. Consider and reconsider. This is why it's great that you have the artificial intelligence now, because consider is weighing the pros and cons, and reconsider is questioning a conclusion based on additional information. This is kind of like, I'm just going to think about it. And this is thinking about it, but you're thinking about what you thought before with new information. And again, if you're new to this way of breaking down what your story's about, really understanding what's driving everything, that can be like, well, I don't really see the difference. And so that's when you would want to use these new features. So let's see what Clint, if he's coming from a place to consider, an example of that would be Clint believes that people want to consider a group in order to live a happy life because humans are social animals. We are constantly interacting with others and need to feel a sense of connection in order to feel fulfilled. Yeah, that works, the sense of belongingness and purpose, but I don't know, perhaps that doesn't quite work with William Money the Killer. Will believes that people can think about someone in order to think themselves capable because it allows them to better understand and empathize with that person. It also gives them a chance. Okay, this is a little bit closer because if you remember, like 90% of the film is him thinking about all the awful things that he's done. His efforts to reflect on it are ways to work through the pain. So this is a little bit closer. We'll try one more just to see if believes that people don't need to consider one alternatives in order to live a happy life. He believes that people can be happy without considering what could have been. All right, there's something really close to that that I like. Clint believes, and again, this is, if I didn't have any idea of what my story was about, then I could use this and build something off of it. But I'm trying to match the original film just to see if it can come close. So Clint believes that people don't need to consider one's alternatives in order to live a happy life. So, nah, I don't want any part of this. He believes that people can be happy without considering what could have been. All right, I'm just going to leave that for right now and see what that comes up with. It's close. Let's do the Morgan Freeman character and then the kid that comes along. It's all about reconsider. Morgan believes that people need to think something through again in order to be happy. So obviously we can flip that around. She believes that people often make rash decisions without considering all the consequences and that these decisions can lead to unhappiness. Believes that it's important to take the time to think through all the possible outcomes of a decision before making it in order to ensure that the decision will lead to happiness. That's almost like 100% exactly what it is. So believes that people need to think. So I'm just going to change gender reassignment here. He believes, okay, and let me just make sure. Clint believes that people don't need to consider one's alternatives. Let me just try one more time and see if There's something that's a little closer. He believes that everyone is capable of taking care of things on their own and that groups only serve to complicate things. Kind of like that. What I'll do is I'll get rid of this first sentence because they're all about the same thing, even though it's a little bit different flavor to it, it's going to work. He believes that people can be happy without considering what could have been. He believes that everyone is capable of taking care of things on their own. Do you see how that works? The subtext is the important part. The storytelling, you can add on to it as long as it refers back to that subtext. You can go anywhere with it. And now we have these two sides of the argument. Let's see what it sounds like. Their you and I moment. Well, we'll wait for you. When you draft the you and I, it gets put into your story so that then you can just drop it into whatever scene you want. Morgan tells Clint, "Are we so different, you and I? What do you mean?" Clint replies, "You're always so sure of yourself, always so certain that what's best for everyone. But sometimes I think you're just too afraid to consider other possibilities, to think about what could be." "You're right," Clint says. "I'm afraid. I'm afraid what could have been of what might have been. And I'm also afraid of what is. I'm afraid of the decisions I make, of the choices I have to make, but I'm not afraid of thinking about them. I'm not afraid of considering all the options." "I think you're right," Morgan says. "We are different. I think you're afraid of living. You're afraid of really living, of feeling things, of considering the alternatives, but that's not living. That's not living at all." Just laughing because it's complete magic, but there's meaning behind it. So there's actually something being said here, which is the really exciting part. All right. So that's 2 for 2. And then the other one, which might be a little bit different, I'm going to gamble and I'm going to go for 3. If you want, I'll leave a link to it down in the description below. But there's a whole video compilation of those you and I moments. The classic one here, which is at the center of the video, is Gladiator, where he finally meets him and says, "Are we so different, you and I?" It's between Commodus and Maximus here, which their names will definitely, well, maybe because maybe it'll be historical, so maybe it'll be a little bit different. But the part I wanted to get across is that opposed to Collateral and Unforgiven, where the main character is the one that changes when he considers who he is. I'm just a guy who works on a farm taking care of my kids. And at the end, he's completely reconsidered everything. That's a story where the main character changes their resolve and they had this complete 180. In Gladiator, the cool thing about this is Russell Crowe, his character is 100% steadfast. He's the one that from beginning to end, he knows what he wants. And what happens is Commodus here on the other side, he's the one that flips over. Joaquin Phoenix, for some reason I couldn't think of his name, so that's why I was using the character. Joaquin Phoenix, he comes over and adopts his point of view where he starts to take care of things. Whereas before he's working in the shadows, he's pulled out and put on stage and has to come out and actually defend himself, even though he cheats. In that one, let's get rid of Clint Morgan here. And let's see, Maximus. All right, this time I'll do Max. And this time, should I do Joaquin or I'll do Jerry? All right, we'll do Jerry. And then, like I said, instead of changed, which is the argument that the premise is making here on the right, is either an argument about abandoning an inappropriate way of dealing with things or staying the course and maintaining. So I'm going to keep that maintain there so that it's more like Maximus and his point of view. Okay, so theirs is an argument between logic and feeling. So in the film, Maximus is very step by step. Are you not entertained? I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. He's all about the rational choice. If he doesn't take care of it, everything's going to go to hell. He's been told, "Hey, this is your position," but then that guy passes away. It's very much, what are the steps I need to take in order to get revenge? And I'm just going to stay the course. Whereas Joaquin Phoenix, Commodus, I think his name's Commodus, I hope it is feeling. He's very emotional. He's always, "I wish people would just love me. My daddy doesn't love me," all that kind of thing. And he wants the crowd. He loves the roar of the crowd. And that's all that matters. Regardless of how rational it is, if they love him, then that's the most important thing. Those are their two positions. And it's a little bit different. And you'll see a slight difference here. It probably won't be as apparent, especially with these two, but I just wanted to point that out, that it is a slightly different argument and will play out a little bit different. Max believes that people can be logical about a group in order to live a happy life. He believes that if people can identify the positive and negative aspects of a group, they can rationally choose to either join or avoid the group. This allows people to live happy lives by making informed decisions. That's close. Let's see if there's a little bit better one that I can add on to it. People are rational about someone in order to know they are loved because they can see how that person treats them and how that person makes them feel. Max believes that people can love someone without knowing them because, try one more. Max believes that people should not have trouble following directions step by step in order to be fulfilled. If people just focus on being present and do what is asked of them, they would be much happier and successful. You can see this is a logical argument. People can identify, let's see, can be logical about, the crowd. Max believes that people can be logical about society. That's that whole, are you not entertained? He believes that people can identify the positive and negative aspects of, they can rationally choose to either join or avoid the group. This allows people to live happy lives. Okay, that's a little bit closer to what he's dealing with. And let's see what Jerry is doing here. Jerry just wants people to love him. Jerry believes that people want to lack feelings in order to be capable of taking care of things because they think it will make them more efficient. However, Jerry thinks that this is a misguided idea because feelings are what make us human. Without them, we would be little more than machines. All right. That's a little cool, except a little too modern for Rome. But I like the idea behind it. So all I do is like collecting ideas of feeling. Jerry believes that in order to be successful, people need to feel something for someone. He thinks that if people can connect with others on an emotional level, they will be more likely to achieve their goals. All right, that's 100% Gladiator. And now let's see what that argument is. So you can see Max here is much more direct, and Jerry's is trying to get what I want without actually going directly for it. That's the difference between a changed and a steadfast. So let's go ahead and generate that argument and see if we get that famous scene from Gladiator, although it'll be one between Max and Jerry. So let's see what Max and Jerry. All right. Jerry tells Max, you and I were the same. How do you figure that? Max scoffs. We're both intelligent, successful people, but you're missing something, Max. You're too logical. You need to feel something for someone in order to be truly successful. That's nonsense, Max counters. You're emotional, Jerry, and that's your weakness. You let your feelings get in the way of making rational decisions. That's why you'll never be as successful as me. You might be successful, Max, but you'll never be truly happy. You'll always be alone because you're afraid to let anyone in. I'm just imagining this is playing out in the arena. I'm not afraid to let anyone in. I just don't need anyone. Well, that's close. That's not true, Max. You're afraid of being hurt. You're afraid of feeling something for someone and then losing them. But that's what life is, Max. It's about taking risks and feeling things, even if it means getting hurt. I'm not afraid of anything, Jerry. I'm not afraid of being hurt because I know that I can always rationalize my way out of it. I'll never be as emotionally attached to anyone as you are. Whoa. That's it. I did it. 3 for 3. All these were completely generated with the combination of subtext and the artificial intelligence features. This is available to everybody who is a subscriber to Subtxt, and you can go in and have as much fun as I just had, creating your own narratives and building them based on meaning, on intent, on what it is you want to communicate to your audience, not something completely random that's completely made up and just really has no connection with what it is that your heart is trying to put on the page. So thanks for tuning in. That's it for this episode of Building Subtext, and I will see you next time.